it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's You Crow Girl, Happy Harvest, Absolutely Awesome, Crazy Antics, Critters on the Farm, Scripty Autumn Sentiments, and Big Acorn. So I've stamped the images I'll be using on 2 panels of Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers. And there is a lot of coloring for this card, so I'm going to jump right in and start with my Scarecrow Girl's face. I'll use E50, E51, and E53 for that, laying in some shadow with the E53 under the hat brim and on the sides of the face under the pigtails, and then blending toward the center with the E51 and E50. Then I'll darken that up by taking away the E50 and adding in the E55. And I am going to do the picnic basket from Crazy Antics, using that E55 for the shadows on the base of the handles and the sides of the basket, and then also under the lip of the basket there. And then blending that out with the E53. And then I'll fill in any remaining white space with the E51. And I did do a second layer of that off camera just to increase that saturation. Then I'll darken that up even further by taking away the E51 and adding in the E57. And I'll use this combo for my apple basket. So using the E57 first for the shadows and outlining each of the little slats that are making up that basket. And then I'll blend that out with the E55. And I'll use the E53 for the highlight. So rather than switching to a whole bunch of different browns, you'll see that I have stuck with the same E50 family and just done a whole range from light to dark, and that's really going to give my card a lot of cohesiveness. I'm also going to use this combo for her hat, again using that E57 for the edges and the area around the band, and then I'll blend that out with the E55. So the area that would be reflecting the most light would be the top of the brim and then also the top of the hat. So that is where my highlight is going to go with that E53. And then I am going to continue using the E50s and darken it up one more time, taking away the E53 and adding in the E59. And I'm going to do the centers of my sunflowers with the E59 down toward the bottom in kind of like a C shape, and then blending out with the E57, and then filling in with the E55. I put the highlighted areas over the little dots that are drawn there so that I can go back and fill those in with the E59 to give those a little pop. Then I am going to switch away from browns and add in some rosy cheeks to my Scarecrow Girl and my crows. I'm using R11 and R20 for that. And I will be coloring the additional sheet of images off screen just to save some time in the video because there were so many images to color. Next, I'm going to work on the hay. So I'm using YR20, YR21, and YR23. And I'll do this for her little pigtails and also the hay that is sticking out of her sleeves and her skirt. So YR23 first, and then I'm blending that out with the YR21. And those are super tiny little areas, but I really did want to have a nice little highlight in there. So I did use some YR20 for that. And then once I finish with her, I'm also going to use this same combo for the hay bale since it should be made of the same hay. So I just put my shadow down at the bottom for the hay bale and then blended up toward the top where the light would be hitting it the most since our light source is the sun above. Again, to tie this color palette together, I am going to keep that YR21, but add to it the YR24 and YR27, and I'll do some of my pumpkins with this combo. It's a little bit more of a golden orange, but I wanted to have different colors of pumpkins since we have multiple in this scene. So I just wanted to mix it up and have something that was a little bit more unique. And then for my other pumpkins, I'm going to go with YR12, YR14, and YR18. So I'm adding that YR18 to the bottom and then also to the creases, and then blending out with the YR14. And then I'll fill in any white space with the YR12 so we have a nice highlight on the topmost rounded areas of the pumpkins. And I'm going to do the small pumpkin to match with this combo. And then I wanted to tie those colors in somewhere else on this card, so I'm actually going to do one of the patches on her dress. I filled it in with just the YR12, and then I took the YR18 and added some stripes to that to create a little plaid pattern. It wasn't quite dark enough though, so I used the E19 instead and just went right over top of what I had already done. Next, I'm going to bring in a cranberry red using R35, R37, and R39, and I will do the apples in the basket and also the single apple. These are all from Absolutely Awesome. And when I was coming up with the concept for this card, I really just wanted to bring together all of the things that I love about fall. So pumpkins and apples and sunflowers and scarecrows and colored leaves and crows, anything that I could think of, I tried to combine into one card. And then I also really wanted to have really rich fall colors. So that's what I'm trying to do on today's card. I am going to lighten up this combo slightly by bringing in R32, and I will use the lightest 3 shades there for her shirt for the initial layer, using R37 for the shadows, blending out with the R35, and then I'll fill in with the R32. And then I want to add some detail to that, so I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes, and in the meantime I will also color her hat band to match. So I'm going to place that R37 on the outer edges so it matches with the rest of the shading on the hat, and then pull in with the R35 and use the R32 for the front where it's the most rounded toward the light. Then I'm going to come back in with those details for my shirt. So I'm taking that R39 and adding some vertical stripes across her sleeves and chest area. And then I will add a horizontal stripe in the center of that. Then I will skip down to the R35 and add a vertical stripe in between the darker stripe to create a nice little plaid pattern. For her little overall dress, I am going to go with an olive green tone using YG93, YG95, and YG97. So the YG97 is the darkest. I place that up on her shoulders and on the sides of her dress, the bottom of the pocket, and just carefully around those little patches. Then I'll come in with the YG95 for the midtone and just pull that darkest color into the center. I'm also going to fill in the belt area with that YG95 just to give it a bit of contrast. And then I will finish with the YG93 for the highlight, adding that to the center of the chest area and the pocket and also the front of the skirt. And I really like how that combo turned out with that red shirt. I thought that was really cute. And then I used the YG95 for her ponytail bands, and I used the YG97 with the YG93 for my pumpkin stems. Then I'm going to switch greens to G40, G43, and G46. And I'm going to use this for my wagon. I like this combo for fall because it's not too bright. It doesn't look like a really fresh spring green. It looks more, toward the end of the year type of green where things are a little bit faded, but the green is still really lovely. So using that G46 for the darkest, filling in most of the handle with that, and then blending out with the G43. And then that G40 has such a lovely tone to it. It's one of my favorite light green markers. I just think it's so pretty, especially in combination with these other two. And then I'll also do my leaves for my apples with the G46 and just the G43, since those are super small. And I also did the patch on her shirt with this combo, which, by the way, I just stamped those patches where I wanted them. It's a separate stamp that you can add anywhere, and the same with the pocket. I'm moving on to a yellow combo, and I'm using Y13, Y15, and Y17 for my sunflowers, and also for the small little sunflower, which will go on her head. It doesn't have to be a sunflower, but I'm going to make it a sunflower. I just forgot to color the brown part when I did the others, so I'll have to come back to that later on. But I'm using the Y17 closest to the center of the flower, and then also filling in about half of the petals that are on the back side. And then I'll fill them in completely with the Y15 for the front petals. I will still save some room on the tips for the Y13 so that they are a little bit more highlighted, and the ones that are in the back look a little bit more cast in shadow. And then I also did her little snaps on her overalls with this combo. I will do the last patch on her dress with that, and I'm going to let that dry, and then I will come back and add some little polka dots to that in a sec. But in the meantime, I will also do my crow's beaks, and I know crows usually have black beaks, but I just wanted to have more festive colors on this card. So for those crows, I'm going to bring in the toner grays. I'm using T3, T5, and T7. So I'm starting with the T7 down the back of their bodies and then blending forward with the T5. I also started at the top of their wings with the T7 where it's connected toward their body. That way the highlight would be on the tips where they're a little bit outstretched. And then filled in with the T3 for that highlight, also filled in the center of my wheel wells. And then I went back to the E55 and E57 for the center of that small flower and also the post that she's standing on. I forgot to do that as well. And then finally, I am going to bring in my soft pinks to do the leaf. I'm using R000 with R11 and R20, which were the colors that I used for the rosy cheeks. Then I grabbed a black Sakura Jelly Roll pen and got that going off to the side. And I'll go over the eyes of my scarecrow girl and my crows. And then I will bring in that second sheet of images so you can see them all together and trim them out with their matching dies. For my background, I cut down a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock with the largest of the small stitch rounded rectangle stackables, and I'm going to add some Distress Oxide ink to this to create a background. So first I'm using some Speckled Egg Distress Oxide ink with the Cloudy stencil and just blending that on to create a sky. So I'll turn that stencil to create a different cloud formation and continue working my way down that panel a little bit more than halfway. About halfway is what I want to show, but I like to have the background kind of blend into each other. And then I just added a little bit of ink down at the bottom so it wouldn't be quite so stark white. It's mainly going to get covered up, but I just wanted to have everything look nice and consistent. And then I'm going to bring in Scattered Straw, and I'm going to use the corn image, the corn stalk image from Happy Harvest. And I'm going to stamp that all along the horizon line, or what will be the horizon line, just to fill in the background a little bit more and make it look like this is set against a cornfield. So I'm just stamping those at varying heights. The bottom doesn't matter because I'm going to cover that up in just a minute, but I'm just trying to stagger those to make it look a little bit more natural. so that they're all kind of growing at different heights. And I will complete out that row with a last one on the right, and then I'm going to go back in and kind of overlap a few more so that it looks like there are more rows of corn in the distance. And again, I'm just varying the heights of those so that they look a little bit more natural. Then I will bring in the slimline grassy stencil and line that up right at the bottom of the cornfield. And I am going to blend on some bundled sage Distress Oxide ink to start. So I'm making sure to really press that into the grooves that create the little grasses, and then kind of go softer as I make my way down the panel. And then to darken that up, I'm going to add in some forest moss, and I'll add that up where the grasses are again, and then go back to the bundled sage to blend those two together. And then I will set this panel aside to dry. Once it has, I'll pop it in my MISTI so that I can stamp my sentiment, and I'm doing that in VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'm stamping out the phrase "You Crow Girl," which I think is super adorable and goes so perfectly with this stamp set. So stamp that down twice to make sure I had a good impression, and then I still felt like the Y in you was not quite dark enough, so I inked that up one more time. Was much happier with that, so I'll set that aside to dry and pop my card base in my MISTI. I'm using Lawn Fawn's Craft cardstock and stamping on the inside in walnut ink, and I'm stamping one of the pumpkins from Happy Harvest. And then I'm going to position a crow from Happy Harvest right on top of that, and also give him a phrase from You Crow Girl. And that says, "I hope that you like this cod," with the CAWD, like a crow would caw, which I think is hilarious. So I just had to use that. So now I am ready to pick out some pattern paper, and I'm using the Falling Leaves collection. I'm using the 6x6 pad and just flipping through and trying to decide which colors I want to use. I decided to go with more neutral tones for the background because I really wanted the coloring to shine, and we had so many images on today's card that I just really wanted those to stand out and kind of have the pattern paper be a little bit of a backdrop. So I trimmed those down with the largest of the large stitch rectangle stackables, and I am going to glue that on my card front to completely cover it. So that die cuts out a panel that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, which is the same size as an A2 standard size card. And then I'm going to glue the green gingham piece right over top, and then I can remove that post-it tape. I honestly could have left it because it would have been covered up anyway, but I just went ahead and removed that. And then I added some foam tape to the back of my focal panel so I can give a little bit of dimension on the scene. I'll line that up in the center of the card and pop that down into place, and then I can bring in my images. And I am going to start by positioning the Scarecrow Girl where I want her, but I'm not going to adhere her down just yet. There's actually going to be quite a few layers of images, and so I need to know where she's going, but I can't glue her down just yet because some stuff might end up being a little bit behind her. So I'm just making sure that I can still slip her in and out, and I am adding the wagon with the pumpkins right over top of her pole, and then I am going to have the hay bale kind of balancing that out over on the left hand corner, just a little bit below that, kind of catty corner if you're looking at just the grass area. And then on top of that, I'm going to place the basket of apples. And then in front of the wagon with the pumpkins, I am going to place the picnic basket, and I am going to fill that with sunflowers. So I'm going to take one of the large sunflowers and add that kind of hanging out of the top of the basket on the right hand side. And then I'll take one of the smaller sunflowers and add that over on the left. And I will take one of the leaves from the Scripty Autumn Sentiments and tuck that under the larger sunflower just to add a bit of greenery to that basket. And then I want to have a few sunflowers behind my scarecrow girl as well, kind of growing up behind her. So I'm going to add the stems and then add the sunflowers over top of them. So I want to be careful to balance this scene out a bit with the visual weight of the different imagery. So because we have a large sunflower down at the lower right, now I'm placing a large sunflower over on the upper left, and then I am going to add a smaller sunflower over on the upper right. Just kind of squeezing that down the stem a little bit further back behind those pumpkins. I don't want everything to be at the exact same height. And then I am going to add a large pumpkin down in front of the hay bale. And next to that, I will place the small pumpkin. I was having trouble finding it in my little dish there, but I decided to add it kind of between the larger pumpkin and the basket. But I am going to change my mind here in just a second because I, again, wanted to balance out the little pops of red. So I'm going to slide that larger pumpkin over, add the smaller pumpkin over on the left, and then add the apple toward the right in front of that picnic basket. And then I have another small sunflower that I'm going to add back behind the basket of apples. So I'll just make sure to add that stem there first, and then I can add the sunflower over top, just tucking that behind the basket so that we have lots of different layers on this card and we create a lot of depth. So now that my sunflowers are all glued down, I can go ahead and adhere my scarecrow girl, just tucking that stem back behind the pumpkins to push her further back into the scene and also give her a nice bit of height. Then I'll add the flying crow coming in from the right to balance out the sentiment on the left. I'm also going to add the larger standing crow down at the bottom left, and then the smaller standing crow is going to go on the handle of the wagon to balance out the extra sunflower on the left. I have two more of those larger green leaves from the Scripty Autumn Sentiments, so I'm just finding places that I want to stick those and add some extra little details into the scene. So I added one back behind the standing crow at the bottom left, and then I'm adding one behind the large pumpkin in the wagon. And then all that's left is a few colored leaves. These are all using the Big Acorn stamp set, that little mini set. I love the shape of this leaf because it looks like an oak leaf. So I'm just going to add these colored leaves in here and there to round out my scene, kind of tucking them where I think they should go. And then I decided that kind of reddish brown leaf was too close to the color of the pumpkin, so I swapped it out with the gray one. And then I'm tucking another pink one back behind the smaller pumpkin toward the center of the card, right below the scarecrow girl. And then I've got another gray one over on the upper right and another reddish brown one at the upper left. And I am going to twist those a bit so it looks like they're flying through the air and just kind of being kicked up by the wind. And then of course I had to finish up this card with a little bit of glitter, so I'm taking my favorite Stardust Stickles and adding that to my sunflowers and placing it on the brown centers because I love how it pops against that rich dark color. And then I'll also add it to all of my colored leaves. And that is going to finish up this card, so I will lift that up to the camera so you can see all of the detail and give you another peek at the inside. I have to say that I absolutely love how this one turned out. I think this is my favorite fall card that I've ever made. I just love the combination of different Lawn Fawn images and how they've all come together, and also that really rich, warm color palette. So if you enjoyed it too, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell if you want to be alerted when I post new videos. The products I use will all be listed and linked in the description bar below in case you'd like to pick up anything for yourself. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.